Okay, friends, I've got the beta copy of GenSwap, the new generative AI technology coming to Luminar Neo on November 16th, so just a few days. It allows you to swap out, replace, add elements that weren't in the photo to begin with. It is beta copy, so things may change, just to be in full disclosure mode here. But I'm going to walk through some things to know about it, some tips and tricks and best practices, and of course, show you some examples. Let's get going. GenSwap. Still in beta. We've covered that. So what does it do? Swap out objects. You can see that here. It is based on your prompt, and the prompt, if you've used this technology in Photoshop, for example, you know it's all about the prompt. The prompt is obviously super important and can vary your results. Release date is November 16th, so just a few days. You have to have an active subscription or have the Creative Journey Pass 2023-2024. You have to have one of those. It is based on Stable Diffusion. The rest of this is pretty much just like the Gen Erase function that came out recently. So based on Stable Diffusion, because it is going to the cloud, it requires an internet connection. There's no credit limit. It does come back with a 1536 pixel area, and that is upscaled locally. All this is the same as Gen Erase. It also creates a new file that's a TIFF, and it puts it in your Generative Creations folder. It's not an extension. Right now, it's only in English, but more languages are coming, including all the other supported languages that Luminar already supports. A few things you need to know here. Number one, when you're masking an area, and I'll show you how this works in just a second, mask an area bigger than you need. You want to give it some space, basically. Make sure you catch everything, including like shadows and reflections, because if you're doing something but you don't touch the reflection, let's say, you replace an object, then the object and the existing reflection aren't going to match. So you want these kind of things to be matched up. And then if you get an inappropriate content error message, then change the mask or the prompt if you're sure that you're not violating the terms. And we'll talk about the terms in a second. You don't use any verbs. This is a noun and adjective. So you're using things like it says at the bottom, nouns and adjectives in the prompt. Blue sea, big tiger, pink flower, whatever it might be. You don't need to say change this or add that or remove that. That messes it up. And be as descriptive as you possibly can. I've used 2-word prompts, and in fact even 1-word prompts, and it works. Sometimes it works better than others, but the more detail and more I put behind the prompt, the better the result. I think that's kind of clear to understand. The other thing I want to point out is they do actually have an AI guideline policy, because some people are saying, well, what if I do this, to an image? Can I sell that image, etc.? You might want to go check that out and get into all the T's and C's, for lack of a better term. But what I want to do is, of course, show you this technology in action. So I've got a photo here, and as Gen Erase does, GenSwap just shows up over here. So you just click on it once you've highlighted the photo, and it brings it in, and you've got this menu here. And then you've got a couple of options. And what I want to do is I'm going to increase my mouse, so that's right bracket key. And I'm going to paint over this tree, and notice I'm not being accurate. I'm going outside the bounds of the tree, and I'm just kind of going bigger than the actual branches are, because what I want to do is replace this with some pink cherry blossoms. So once I've highlighted that, I've got my mask in place. It just says down here at the bottom, what do you envision here? And this number that you see, 256, that's the character limit. You've also got down here GenSwap menu, where you can reverse your changes. This information just tells you information about it. There's a before and after, a zoom, select or deselect. So select is what I did, that's a mask. Deselect, I could change to that and come over and deselect some of the mask. Well, I don't want that, so I'm going to go back to mask, to select, and go ahead and paint over this tree so that I make sure that I get everything that I want. Again, cover it really well. You can reset your selection, and then when you're ready, actually, you need to type in what you want here. I want pink cherry blossoms. So I want to take this green kind of, it's a live oak here in Texas. I want that tree to become a pink cherry blossom tree. Then I click on swap, and it begins the process of going to the cloud. Again, need the internet connection, doing its magic, we'll call it, and coming back to you. Now there's generative tips, which are basically the same tips I covered. You can cruise through these, and it'll tell you each thing here in turn, but and you can always back up if you want to go back to the beginning. There's, at this time, not a way to disable that menu. I would hope that they'll allow me to disable or just turn that menu off, but I'm in beta. It's not like that right now, and so I wait. But regardless, I'm waiting because this has got to go to the cloud, and depending on the image, Sometimes it's reasonably quick, sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's kind of slow. There we go. I mean, all that time that I was talking, which might have felt like a long time to you, I've got cherry blossom trees. Now, I will say, quality-wise, if you're starting with I shoot with the Sony. This is an old Nikon file, and it was a JPEG that I started with. But even with an older Nikon 10 megapixel camera, not to mention my Sony 42 megapixel full-frame camera now, the pixels that come back, they're smaller. So if you're going to make this really large and blown up, it may not look that great. But that's my cherry blossom tree that I just replaced the other branches with. Now, if you don't like it, you can change the prompt. You can come back in here and retype something. Sometimes what I'll do is say pink cherry blossoms and then a comma and a space and say saturated, comma, space, in bloom, whatever. You might want to refine that, but I'm okay with that like it is. And then when you're done, you just click save and it's going to drop it in your generative creations folder. And here it is. Now, you can see I've been playing with a lot of things, and this is what we're going to spend the rest of the video on. But there's the image I just created. And, it did a pretty okay job. I also took this same photo, and instead of changing the tree, I just typed in red barn, and I got that barn. And so, it's an okay looking barn. If you look at it, like the angles and things aren't exactly perfect, I would say. And I will say compared to the rest of the scene, it's not as photorealistic. It's a little more, I'm going to call it cartoonish, right? So here, the tree, it's okay. I mean, from a distance, at a glance, it looks okay. But if you zoom in and things like that, it doesn't, I think, look incredibly perfectly real. So red barn, here's another variation of a tree. That one I like a little bit better than the first one. And then here, I did a barn and a tree. Now, you got to do that 2 different times because when you highlight an area, if you highlight a second area, you only have room for 1 prompt. And so it's going to try to stick that prompt in 2 places. That's not really working. So I don't know if that's going to change, but what I'm doing is highlight an area, prompt, hit save. It takes you to this generative creations folder. From there, go back to GenSwap and then highlight a new area and a new prompt. And that's how I was able to do this. But you will notice it's a completely different barn. I don't know what this extra piece here is, and I don't know why it looks like there's a mirror kind of reflecting that background there. But here's another one, same prompt, red barn, and that's a much better barn than the last one, if you want to compare them, right? Same tree, but different barn, although it's a little bit wonky there. Here's the other thing that I'm finding is that along this edge, I can see a little bit of an outline of where my mask was. Now, I don't really see that around the tree, but I do see it around the barn. So that's something I'm noticing in some photos, not all of them. Again, this is going to the cloud, going to Stable Diffusion. It's based on their model, and those models get revised and enhanced all the time. So it's only going to get better. Also, we're in beta, so it's probably going to improve as well. But I wanted to point out that some of the things that I'm seeing. And then I took the photo, and I, a third time, went in and masked in or painted in the entire foreground and said, green grass, shallow depth of field. And I think that was it. And I got that. So you can see, you can iterate. And I actually want to pause and mention that sometimes I'll do red barn and it won't come back looking really that great. And so I'll erase it and then go do it again, same prompt or maybe slightly different, red traditional barn or something like that. Anyway, the point is the prompt is very key here, and you got to keep kind of refining that sometimes. And here I added a balloon as well. So I did all those things and added a hot air balloon. As you can see, it doesn't look super photorealistic. Here's an example where I added a red double-decker bus, and that's what I got. The thing is, the bus looks okay. It's a little shrunk for the size. That could probably change if I change my mask. If you make your mask bigger, the object that it fills the space appears like it's going to be bigger. But what I noticed is it added trees in the background here under the that end of the tower bridge, which there are not trees there. That's a road. Here I added this couple. My prompt was couple holding hands facing away. And holding, technically, I guess, is a form of a verb, but it worked here, and it's not incredibly photorealistic. So, here's an example where I added a surfer, but it looks like something's hanging off of him, or he's got a third arm, so it just kind of depends. Here, I used the same tree and the same prompt 3 different times, which was some form of pink saturated cherry blossoms in bloom, and I went from that to that to that. So I'm getting different results because each time you send it up to Stable Diffusion, I mean, it's a new photo, I guess. And so they're saying, oh, here's what I think that he's asking for. Here's an example I want to talk about. And this was, I took this cup, and this was a photo of a cup and nothing else. And what I did is I wanted to add some steam. So my first prompt was I masked that area and I typed steam. What happened was it came back with a quote bubble that had the word steam in it. So I erased that, and then I tried mist. And then it did a weird kind of dark thing. So I erased that, and then I tried haze. And again, it did something like it did with mist, which is kind of a weird, dark kind of thing in that area. So I kept refining it, and then ultimately my prompt was white, steamy haze coming from cup. And that's pretty much exactly what I wanted. I wanted some kind of steam coming off of this as though a cup of tea or coffee was letting off steam. So it took that white, steamy haze coming from cup, so 6-letter prompt, fairly descriptive in order to get it the way I wanted it to look. But then after doing that, I went back to GenSwap a second time, and I said I just masked in over the red cup, and I typed blue coffee cup, and it gave me that. So it kept the steam, but it changed it to a blue coffee cup. And it's interesting here that the way that further rim is higher than the foreground, because it's like you're looking into the cup, you can actually see the steam is slightly over the ledge there as though it's coming from inside the cup. And that's pretty interesting, and I think it did a pretty good job. So that's essentially GenSwap. It's cool stuff. It's in beta. It's coming out on the 16th, so just a few days. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm experimenting. And I think so far it's a nice and frankly kind of fun thing to have. I've been doing a lot of fun things, some of which I'm not going to show you, like adding a submarine to some water or a mermaid, lots of different kind of random things that you can do. I do think of this as a tool that could accentuate things like in a landscape or cityscape, which is primarily what I shoot. That's really kind of a first look preview of what's coming with GenSwap. Focus on the prompt. Take your time. You may have to do it multiple times in order to get it right, but it's pretty cool technology. It's only going to get better, and so far I'm having a lot of fun with it. Hope this gives you some idea of what's coming. If you don't have Luminar Neo yet, of course, you can get it at the link below, which is an affiliate link, and I'll be back here making more videos about this and other technologies. Let me know if you have any particular questions. Leave them down below. I'll see you soon, my friends. Thanks for watching, and until next time, adios.